Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey there, everybody. It is the Optimized AF podcast. This is Blake Rayhans.
And this is Stacie Mallon. Welcome to another episode. It's always interesting in the pre-show for us to talk about, I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that 2020 is drawing to a close. We're almost to October.
Yeah.
And we've heard a lot of people talk about we just need 2020 to be over. 2020 sucks. So today we're going to talk about mindset because I don't know if this is a newsflash for anyone else, but as we were talking this morning, January 1st of 2021.
Hold the phone. This just in.
Nothing's going to fucking change.
Nothing's going to fucking change on January 1st.
Unless you change it.
It is not a light switch.
Yep. And so we decided a while ago we were going to talk about mindset. We have a guest coming on in an episode today as well, talking about mindset and how you can either utilize what's happened in the last 8 months to your advantage, or you can bitch and moan about it. And that's a choice. You can choose to believe in scarcity, or you can choose to believe in abundance. You can choose to stay in fear, or you can choose to move towards light and goodness. Those are choices. And I would say I've had days where I don't choose light and abundance. I choose to wallow in my misery because not every day has been an easy day. We've discussed this at length on this podcast, but this podcast was born out of Blake and I really setting an intention to create more positive energy for ourselves and for the people around us and for our businesses by being on this podcast.
Yeah. And as always, whatever message we share, we hope it resonates with at least somebody out there that's can sympathize or empathize with the same situation. And what we were talking about before coming into today is that I think it's almost like the stages of grief. It happened, people were uncertain, and then it's, acceptance, and then it's, I'm angry about it, and then it's like, okay, I have to reinvent myself, and what's the new norm, and this is sort of this thing that we were talking about is, what is that new norm? Well, it's whatever you create, right? There's certainly always going to be factors of your environment, there's factors of the market, there's factors of the political climate, there's factors that will dictate what we do and don't do. At the end of the day, though, it depends on what you put into your path. You have the power to choose. It's been said a couple different ways. I don't remember exactly who said it that it sort of stuck, but like the thing that separates us as humans, in a lot of ways, is we have the power of choice, and you have the power to choose scarcity. You have the power to choose a mindset of abundance, and you have the power to choose to sit there and blame a year. And have this false sense of an end date to this thing, like it's going to all be over on December 31st. There's no better time than now. It's been going on for, what is this now? It's about 6 months, solid of this, affecting the United States in a big way. And I think that it's time that if you're still sitting in a place of waiting for this thing to go away or waiting for things to get back to normal, stop waiting. That's my advice today. Stop waiting.
I think, so a few things came to mind over the weekend. Obviously, this is the end of September. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed about a week ago or so. And one thought on mindset that I had all weekend was being on social. And when you think about the life of RBG, if you've watched anything about her life, I don't believe she would be proud of anybody for attacking anybody on social media about their belief system. I don't think she would be proud of women for not supporting one another regardless of their belief system. It's not what she was about. And so I was really disappointed in a lot of ways about how people have responded to one another, women especially, I'll just call it out, women especially to one another, not being respectful of one another's views. And I know there's a political climate here fear around the choice of her replacement, or should they wait for the replacement. I get the angst and the anxiety. I understand it. But I think she was a woman that was also about respect and kindness and generosity. And she believed everyone should have a voice. That was her whole point. Everyone should have a voice. And to say that if you're on the other side of a belief that you shouldn't have a voice, I don't believe that's what she's about. And again, it's back to mindset. Why are you on social media? Are you on social media to attack other people? Are you on social media to espouse solely your own belief system? Are you on social media to share? Are you on social media to actually reach to others and support them in their belief system and sharing their belief system? And I don't know if you saw this, but LinkedIn, God bless, has stories now. There's stories on LinkedIn. So I don't know if I'm going to try that out. Maybe I'll try that out all week this week. That'll be my new thing. I'm going to be the first person to adopt LinkedIn stories. But I think it's an interesting evolution to think about a professional platform like LinkedIn supporting something like stories, which are really real time, in reality, people's experience versus a crafted post. I mean, that's the whole point of stories. But I say that because I wonder how much more LinkedIn will be infiltrated by political commentary and social commentary now because of adding stories. So it's just an interesting thing, all the things going on in the world right now, and then the choices being made.
Well, and so we talk about mindset and talk about choice with the social media thing. What it does is it brings in the element of influence. And so, what I want people to actually take a, sort of a step back and analyze about themselves is how much are they allowing, how much are you and I even allowing other factors outside of our, say family unit to influence what we think, what we feel, how we act, what we choose to do. And unfortunately, when you bring in the social media aspect of it, and of course, I just watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, so I'm certainly skewed in how I'm talking about this. It's very top of mind for me, but some of that is actually, to a certain extent, out of your control. Because there are certain tools and there are certain algorithms and influences of those tools that are built and created based on what we know of human psychology and the dopamine and what influences that and how you get a reaction out of a person and what that does to influence their behavior. And so when you think about what is my mindset, am I looking at something and always finding the opportunity and the good in it, or am I looking at the situation and spiraling down into the negative? There are many factors at play. And
are you looking for validation of your own opinion? So that's a question. Mm-hmm. You're being targeted. Social media is targeting you. You made a statement right before we started that if you're not paying for something, you are the product.
Yeah, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product.
So for example, on Facebook, if you click through and click on and respond to, various elements that are within your own belief system, your feed will validate your belief system. So you don't see opposing viewpoints because that's how the algorithm works. So I wish there was a social platform. I don't know of one. Maybe somebody can let us know that there is one. I'm a person who does want to understand the alternative belief system. So I tend to not engage, click through, respond to commentary for that reason. I want to have a more agnostic feed. So I am seeing all sides of the views that are out there. I think that there's value in understanding all of the points of view. And I think there's value in, just from a human standpoint, understanding where people are sitting right now and where their minds are and what their fears are and what their perspective is.
Yeah. And I think we could use a whole lot more of people understanding somebody else's view and those two people still being able to sit across from each other and just say, look, we don't see eye to eye. That's fine. Right. It doesn't make you a bad person just because you believe something I don't believe, or you believe differently. Or I think that there's you bring the validation piece of it, and I think that's a big part of what plays into the divisiveness between people when you talk about, I've got this view on an issue, you have an opposing view that doesn't validate that mine's correct, and therefore I need to be in a battle with you. We need to not see eye to eye. We can't have a friendship, even in some cases. That's such an unfortunate thing this year. When you talk about this mindset and how it's affected people, we've always been able to sort of bank on an election year bringing people not to the table to have a really good dialogue, but actually separating people. That's sort of been a given for a long time. It's the election cycle. I think, for the lack of a better way of putting it, we're sort of used to it. This year, though, it seemed like there were so many topics to bring opposing views together. Should we wear masks? Should we not wear masks? Is the coronavirus a hoax? Is it not a hoax? Is it worse than the regular flu? Or is it the same? Is everybody had these opinions based on whatever information they could find at the time. And unfortunately, it created a lot of situations where I think people found themselves with a circle of friends or family that became smaller and smaller and smaller. And you've got these relationships now that I've heard stories of, children and their parents not even talking, completely like split, not talking, haven't spoken in a long time because of what? An issue about the election, an issue about coronavirus, an issue about whatever it is. And I think that is, it's an unfortunate byproduct of people's validation needs, their egos, the mindset that it's finite, right? We talked about it in a previous episode about do you have a mindset of infinite abundance, or do you have a mindset of there's finite things and finite resources, and if you're taking, that means you're taking away from me.
Right. And we had Scott Peoples on, and he gave us such a great metaphor around how to engage in life in a way that you're always a traveler and you're curious and you're wanting to learn more. And it's really relevant to this conversation. If you embrace the mindset of curiosity as a traveler, then what changes in your everyday life? I use this all the time when I start my day. We went to a new coffee place this morning. Across the street from the studio is Bikini Beans Coffee. Clearly by the name, I should have had more insight.
We should have known
of what we were about to walk up on. But 3 beautiful girls were making coffee this morning, and they are in bikinis. That's the part that I was probably should have been more aware of. Great coffee, by the way. Shout out to Bikini Beans on 7th Street. We got our coffee over there, and I think, what's hard right now about masks is I'm a person that always would love to know someone else's story. So that curiosity of, how are you doing today, ladies? And man, it's like, I think you said it's like probably 5 feet by 5 feet in that little hut.
Yeah, they got no space to move around.
No space to move. How is it to work in there? And I think if you approach you can either walk up there with judgment, quite frankly, or you could walk up there and just know that, you're getting great coffee, and what's the story behind, I just wonder what's the story behind how that business was even started. I don't know if it's a local company or a national company, but it's just an interesting concept. But I think that if you approach everything with the mindset of curiosity versus judgment, and that goes, what if everyone approached social media and people's posts with curiosity versus judgment? What if you approached everybody's viewpoint with curiosity versus judgment? What in your life would change? And I think the answer is a lot. And maybe everything about every interaction that you have. I think there's a lot of people right now that just want to state the facts and don't want to hear the alternative opinion, the facts from their perspective. And I think, again, just to dip into COVID, there's still a lot of conflicting data. I am no expert. I actually don't watch a lot of news because I think it's always skewed one direction or the other. So I have a hard time discerning what's factual and what's not factual. I try to do my research on white paper and scientific-based evidence, but that can even be skewed, obviously. So nothing is necessarily pure, but I would just recommend, from a mindset standpoint, going back to how we kicked off this conversation, nothing is going to change on January 1st, 2021. But you can change everything about your life starting today by changing your mindset. And I think we're going to talk about a couple of things that Blake and I have found from a mindset standpoint that we hope to provide to you outside of this traveler analogy from the prior episode. What can you do to change your mindset, and what can you do to start shifting yourself into activation? There are people that activate and people that recede. I'm an activator. Like when shit hits the fan, I'm a get shit done kind of girl. It makes me feel better. I know why I do it. Box checking is like, yes, like, fuck yes, I'm just going to start checking some boxes. As soon as I feel like I'm swirling, I go to activation. That's how I've been since I was young. And I think because we both grew up in a very similar way, you're probably the same way.
Absolutely. I think one of the worst things that can happen to me in a day is a bunch of downtime. Mm-hmm. I'd rather be going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and have this sort of what on the outside looking in would look like just an absolute chaotic day. I would much rather have that than the alternative. Now, of course, you need to, it ebbs and flows. There are days where I just need to be able to be with a heads down project, really in this deep cognitive thinking based on whatever I'm doing at the time. But by and large, I would much rather have action. And, with that, I think what people get caught up on sometimes is they don't want to take action, because when you take action, you have the potential of failure. I'll go to the extreme on it just to make the point. We hesitate on starting something or trying something or taking action, because on the other side of that is then now I got to be accountable to, did I do it? Did I not? Did I fail? Did I succeed? And that's scary. I get it. But if you can get past that and you can just say, look, I'm just going to try. You're much better off for it, and you're going to fail. You're going to not succeed. You're going to suck at something, and that's okay. But at least you tried. The alternative is just incredibly saddening, right? To think that you could go through a day, a week, a month, a year, a lifetime, and be so cautious that you never really kind of lived and really got to where you wanted to go, or where you could have the potential of going. But so when we talk about mindset, so Stacie's mentioned that we're going to, bring some practical things that I think we talked about before the episode of how we do that on the daily, right? Mindset seems like this bigger thing. It's a topic that I think people say, okay, great. Yeah, I get it. Self-talk. I understand. Sure. But how do you actually apply that on a daily basis? How do you get into this really incredible flow where you understand yourself at a deep enough level of when you're at your max and when you can change your mindset in certain situations? And how do you apply that every single day?
I think the first thing that I would recommend post-COVID, not post, whatever, I don't know even what to call this. Like it's just, COVID is not going away. So this is, I guess, post-lockdown, I would say. We're emerging out of more restriction into more freedom, I guess. We're not completely to a place where everything is back to where it was in January of 2020. I don't know that we ever will be. So just accept that and move on. But one thing that I think is a really healthy exercise before we talk about the kind of slice of your day, to Blake's point earlier, activation. COVID forced us to deactivate, whether we liked it or not. And I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from that deactivation if you, again, put some thought process around what you did learn. If you were a person who completely deactivated and was you really let kind of depression take hold. I'm not talking about clinical depression where you don't have a choice. I'm saying if you wanted to sit in your bowl of cornflakes and just do nothing, and that's where some people were. I understand it, but go ahead.
I was just to say, I'll get real for a moment. I was there. Mm-hmm. I never thought I would. I never thought that I would be susceptible to not being able to control my thoughts, my emotions, myself, my actions. And, I look back on it, of course, in the moment, it's just like, it feels like, God, that was a bad day, and then it feels like, wow, that was a bad few weeks or whatever the case may be. But looking back at the last few months, I can objectively say that there was probably an element of depression going on. Now, I don't know to what extent. I didn't have to, seek help or anything like that. I was able to pull myself out of it. But I absolutely found myself in that situation. There was it was overwhelming at times. And I had to lean on the things that I've learned and applied in the past. I had to lean on knowing what I should do. And I talked about it previously before, the knowing doing gap. I let that gap widen. I knew what I should do. I wasn't doing any of it. I got into this great rhythm of being not productive. And not productive to the extent that I normally would. People, somebody else might look at it and be like, what are you talking about? Like you were incredibly busy. You were productive all the time. No, not if anybody knew how I was pre, say March, it was not as productive as I could. I was not investing in myself. I was not filling my own bucket every morning like I used to. I was not doing the things that brought value to my life and therefore value to the people around me as much as I should have been. And so I think, just to your point, I wanted to say, I've been there. I did that. I was there. And I think some people can probably relate to that. And maybe you're still there too right now. If you're listening, maybe you're still in that very real state of not being who you can be right now.
Yeah, I think that one thing to think about, and I've said this to a lot of people about our children, because as parents, we never want to see our children be in pain. I think that has been very hard for most people, to watch your kids or feel like your kids are in pain, feel like they're suffering, and there's sadness and depression. But I think there are a lot of kids out there that had more time with their parents than they've ever had, and there was positives. But it also teaches resilience, and a little story about resilience. And I think everything that happened to me in the last year, or happened for me, let me mindset shift, everything that happened for me in the last year, really paled in comparison to me to something that happened a few years ago. And that was, I was in the middle of, in a situation where I had just taken a new job, at a startup, and I found out that my, husband at the time, was addicted to cocaine and, had spent every dime we had. And I was literally on the floor of my bathroom in the fetal position. Just thought like my life was over, and my children, I had somebody come and get my children from my house, take them away, so I could confront him. His response was he literally walked over the top of me and walked out the door. He had spent the paycheck I had just gotten 2 days before that. There was nothing left. And I had a house to pay for and kids to worry about, and a couple of things there for me. One, I did activate pretty quickly. I got myself off the floor with the help of some friends, some macaroni and cheese, and probably maybe some alcohol. I don't remember.
It's the queso again.
Remember? It was.
Talking about cheese in your life.
Truly, so many things I learned out of that experience was, one, activation does help me, just start checking some boxes, which was, I got to sell some shit to make my bills. So, let's go, let's do this. Number two for me that I did learn about myself is I did need some space. I couldn't just only activate. And so to your point with everything that just happened with COVID, I think be mindful of where you did take space, that it felt good for you. Go back and try to remember the times and the spaces and the whens and the wheres to where you had space to yourself to really give yourself grace for what was happening. And sometimes I've heard of a lot of people started taking early morning walks, or wherever that was in your day. People started doing a meditation practice. People just deactivated in their own way, whatever that was. And be mindful of what that was and how energizing or recharging that was to you. I think that's another lesson I learned out of that prior situation for myself. And the third was I was always afraid to be super authentic and real and raw with my children. And for the first time in our lives, I think, and they were early teenagers, preteens at the time. They saw me cry. They saw me lose my shit. They saw me break down in ways, which I think was a little bit scary for them at first, because that was not me. I did not break. I didn't even bend really most of the time. But I'm human. And as their mom, knowing that it's okay to have those feelings and emotions, and that when things get hard, it's okay to say, this is really hard. And I think those are the lessons as we kind of migrated into COVID. And that those were experiences that myself and my children had from that prior experience. We had greater resilience than most people. We dealt with a lot again this time. We had some additional things happen in our family, but we, I think, navigated through it in a way that we held on to each other, and we were really vulnerable with each other. We talked about stuff, and I think we did a pretty good job. But I give a lot of credit to the fact that we had been through a lot of trauma a couple of years ago, and had to navigate through that very painful situation. So one practice is, I think, go back right now before we head into, the last phase of this year, and reflect, what were the lessons? What are the lessons you've learned in the last 6 months? Where do you need space? How do you activate? What are the things that you activate on that feel the best for you? Because that resilience, and then do the same thing for your children. I think this is such a great lesson for them in resilience for their
Absolutely.
life. That they've never been through anything like this. None of us have. But what if our children take this opportunity to understand how to truly be resilient and how to truly navigate through really tough shit? And I think that could be a blessing for our kids.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's the number one lesson, the number one value that I hope to gain from the experience of COVID-19 2020, the experience that we know as it is today, which of course we're saying 2020 because of when it started. Who knows how long it's going to be? But my kids are much younger, and yet I still started having this conversation. My daughter's 6.5 years old. My son is 3. We're sitting at the dinner table literally a couple nights ago, and I'm trying to plant the seeds in there. I can't have the same type of direct conversation with those minds that, say, a teenager would understand. But I am planting the seeds with them of saying, there's 2 ways we can look at this. You're right. You haven't been able to play with some friends, and you haven't been able to do this or that. And school is a little strange this year, isn't it? You're wearing a mask and you've got plexiglass between the desks. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Sweetie. And I'm having this conversation with her. And then I'm planting the seeds, though, of you have the power to choose how we think about this. Because there's also been a lot of good that's come out of it. I go through it and say, yeah, it's been bad. You know what? Daddy lost his job. And, it's been really hard. We haven't been able to go anywhere. And yeah, we had to cancel our trip to Disneyland. And these are the things that really matter to her. But at the same time, then I say, yeah, but you know what? Through that, I've been able to be home a lot more than I was before. And I was able to be here when you did distance learning from school, when you were on the computer, huh? And gosh, we didn't take the trip, but we did that really cool staycation. And, so you start to make these connections for the children. And I think that's really a valuable mindset thing for them to understand, is the resilience to overcome an obstacle and see the positive in it of how you can learn and apply it to something else going forward. And taking that action. I think that's part of when you get stuck in the negative mindset, it's really difficult to take action. You want to sort of just be stuck in that space of, this is a problem and I have no power over this. I'm sort of helpless in this matter. But if you can take the mindset and you can get them to adapt, you can get them to be resilient, that feeds into being able to take the action that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I've said this to several people. When I was laying on the bathroom floor, the irony was I built and remodeled that house from the ground up. Essentially, we tore it all the way down to the studs. So I'm laying on this cold, honed travertine floor that I hand selected from the quarry. And the irony of that situation was I was, laying on, I can just remember, and I go back to laying and feeling the cold travertine against my face, just totally deactivated, totally that was my floor. That was truly my floor. And I think about that a lot as I sit in gratitude for where we are today. And I would, so again, as you think about what was your floor during this COVID time, where was your cold travertine tile floor for you that you were laying on and you didn't want to get up? And all I could think to myself was, I don't have a choice. I got to get up, I think everybody in this time has been through that thing. And so I would just encourage you to think about what was your basement in this situation? What was your floor in this situation? Where were you at your darkest point? Because that is what helps you shift into a gratitude and an abundance mindset, is to remember where you were and how far you've come. And that helps me all the time. I think about that moment all the time to sit in greater gratitude. And the other practical solution we wanted to give you today is, as we had to slow down for being in lockdown, one thing that became more apparent to me, this is a practice I've always had, is when am I my best every day? When is my brain firing on all cylinders? Where am I really being mindful of my optimized daily time, or daily optimized time? I guess, well, this is optimized AF. So when am I at my most optimal on a daily basis? Everybody has a little sliver. It's like a 2-hour window where we're like, let's get this shit done.
Absolutely.
Right? And I started using this when I lead teams, because I like to know when that time is for my folks, so that I don't schedule meetings during that time. Because why would I steal your best time and put you in a meeting because where you can't even get things done, right? Unless we're doing a strategic plan and we need everybody firing on all cylinders in that meeting. But where are you at your best? And block that time in your day so that you can utilize that time to do your best work. Because for me, I get like 4 times as much done in that block than I do at any other time of day. And so the productivity is higher, my energy is higher, my brain is functioning higher. For me, it's from about 9 to 11 or 9 to 12, depending. So that slice of time in the morning. And then I give myself a break after that time, because you do come out of that kind of like tapped if you're really firing on all cylinders. So that's another takeaway for today, outside of reflection, is how do you figure out, or go ahead and figure out when your optimal time is?
Yeah. Use the reflection, right? We talked about having sort of a retrospective of looking back at your day or looking back at your week and saying, when was that time for me? And you mentioned, block it on your calendar, and I'd say block it and guard it. Guard it as something sacred, because people will schedule over it. So we're going from kind of the personal topic, personal lives, and we're going to transition you guys just at the tail end of this of how you apply it when you're going to work. So when you're with your teams or you're on your team and you're trying to get something done, project, whatever it is, be very aware. And if you're not aware yet of what that time, like yours, 9 to 11, 9 to noon. I know mine is actually about the same. I'm really productive in the morning when I'm alone in my quiet time, and I can be, but it's for certain activities, right? I know that if I need to be incredibly productive with creativity, that's sort of my 9 to noon. Mm-hmm. I can fit other things in there as well. Maybe it's something that it's really deep cognitive, thinking about different strategies and complex situations and models and things. But I know if I need to be deep into detailed, maybe I'm reviewing some written content, or maybe I am looking at numbers on a spread, whatever that is. I know that's more of like a, 2 to 3, 2 to 4 for me anyway, where I can be a little more quiet and just deep into that. So, you just have to know what tasks to fit in where. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned it, Stacie. I think it's so key too for the leaders out there. Understand yourself, but understand your team. Don't steal from them. I love that line. I love that you said that, because I think too often you just throw a meeting on because it just happens to be that everybody can meet at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. And I a big shout out to Chris Mowdy, anyway, for nobody who's going to know who he is, but you and I know who he is. One of the things I appreciated about him is that he guarded his calendar with certain just sanctity of certain times on his calendar that he was like, and he was very much like, look, you want me to have the most productive day, the most productive week? That means we need to be doing these things in this order. And I'm not going to waver on that. I'm not going to be flexible if I can, So anyway.
So today, block some time on your calendar and do hashtag optimized AF. And if people ask you what that is, send this podcast to them, and so they can understand what it is. Self-promotion, shamelessly. So we're gonna wrap for this session, and those are your marching orders. Reflect, and then block your time. Block that optimized time for yourself. Give yourself the gift of being as productive as you possibly can.
Yep. Shift your mindset.
Have a amazing rest of your day, and thank you for joining us. Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Rayhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.